Thank you, John Train and MP Bracing, for becoming my latest new subscribers.
PNOD Family Man in the Philippines. Please subscribe, click the like button, leave a comment.
Good evening, everybody. President Trump on Capitol Hill and at the White House today, selling his ideas on how to protect America and American workers from the coronavirus contagion. President Trump meeting with health insurance leaders to listen to their thinking and to explain his ideas to assure workers of paychecks and health care if the coronavirus crisis worsens, causes work stoppages of any kind, and creates shutdowns in the nation's transportation system, whether airline, shipping, air travel, rail, or on our highways. President Trump also meeting with Republican senators on Capitol Hill. The president pushing his ideas that are at once compassionate and supportive of working Americans, as well as businesses that could be adversely affected by the spread of the coronavirus. The president noted that the administration's nationwide response has received high praise, even from Democratic governors, including California's Gavin Newsom.
We had a very long conversation, and every single thing he said, they followed through on. So I'm just not interested in finding daylight on those statements, because every single thing his administration, and it starts at the top, including the vice president, has been consistent with the expectation that we repatriate these passengers, and we do it in a way that does justice to the spirit that defines the best of our country and the state of California.
And here now is President Trump, obviously pleased with the work that his coronavirus task force under Vice President Pence is making and the nationwide response.
I think the people are doing a fantastic job. In fact, just today I have it inside. Governor Newsom, Gavin Newsom of California, said tremendous. There's an article just came out. I had it inside. I showed it to the senators, and I showed them other articles too, where governors, Democrat governors, are saying we've done a fantastic job. Gavin Newsom said there's not a thing that he's asked for that we weren't able to get him. And, you know, he's been a critical guy, like we all are, but it was a very positive statement. Many Democrat governors have said that the task force and the federal government, what we've done has been terrific.
And the president promising the American people that cost will not be an issue when confronting the Wuhan virus. The president proposing a stimulus package that includes these proposals: a payroll tax cut, wage relief for hourly workers, offering loans for small business, waiving insurance co-pays for testing of the virus, and covering the medical expenses of uninsured patients who contract the coronavirus. The president also clearly laying out the impact his administration has made in the fight against the virus, especially when comparing the Wuhan virus with the flu.
Right now, I guess we're at 26 deaths. And if you look at the flu for this year, we're at 8 million. We're looking at 8,000 deaths, and you know, hundreds of thousands of cases, but we have 8,000 deaths. So you have 8,000 versus 26 deaths at this time. With all of that being said, we're taking this unbelievably seriously, and I think we're doing a really good job. And again, the task force headed up by the vice president has been fantastic.
And our first guest tonight claims his company is creating a coronavirus vaccine, and depending on the approval process of the government, it could be available to the public by the end of this year. Joining us tonight is John Price. He's the president and CEO of Graphics, a genetic engineering firm, and it's great to have you with us.
Thank you.
The president is obviously pleased with the way in which the U.S. government, his administration, is responding. I think the American people are as well. Yet the left continues to make politics an issue here, and they look, frankly, to me, like fools for doing so. We have 28 people in this country who've died of the coronavirus, and 19 of them were at a nursing home in Kirkland, Washington. This seems to me to be a well-controlled response to this virus. Your thoughts?
It is. It's difficult when there is a death, any death. So you have to make sure that people are essentially assured themselves that there's nothing to be fearful about. But either whether it's a numeric challenge or a made-up challenge, we do want to be respectful of what's going on. But it is not...
we're very respectful here.
Right.
And let me say how I've expressed it to the audience of this broadcast. This is not a nation of daffodils and buttercups. We are Americans first, and we are by heritage and by nature men and women of some considerable character and stamina and strength, and we will be treated as adults, simply put. So I think that the president has done a masterful job in communicating that way with great compassion and even inspiration to the degrees at which he is now opening up the coffers of the federal government to assure that all communities, all groups, all identities will be served, especially the most vulnerable.
I came back from Vietnam 2 weeks ago. And I can tell you that my experience has been that people are incredibly impressed with the way that Americans look at something like this. It's something that they admire greatly.
And one of the things that everyone in the world admires greatly is our innovation, our entrepreneurship, and our science and our medical research, and you're at the forefront of that, in the vanguard. And your firm and others like it are working very hard to create vaccines, to create antivirals, therapeutics, to deal with this crisis. You give us a sense of how close you are to having a vaccine that you have confidence in to move forward and to do so aggressively.
Well, I have great confidence. In fact, one of the things I do when I walk through our laboratory is I ask the question, does this work? I mean, you just look at your scientists and say, is this going to work? And the answer is yes. So then the question comes, how fast and how far can you go? And that is two-part. One, the way vaccines are tested is out of the control of a company like ours. It's a government. So essentially what you do is you create a vaccine candidate, no different than anyone else. Mm-hmm. You test that first in small animals, and then you...
No difference in the process,
no,
but
correct.
Decided difference.
Decided difference in the technology. Right. Thank you. And by the way, we all think we have the best vaccine. We know we do, but...
And others think
others think the same way. And the other good news is it would be great if all of them had the right vaccine, because there'll never be enough vaccines.
You think there will not be enough vaccines for the coronavirus, or never enough vaccines for the viruses that we will encounter in the future?
I think writ large there'll not be enough vaccines. I think it's has everything to do with how we prepare in the future, how we're experiencing the diseases that we see today. And if you think about it, the flu, the flu changes itself every year, and that's why the flu vaccine is done.
It's hit and miss, and this past flu season, it's pretty clear that we missed, in part because of the mutation in the 4 strands.
Correct. And I think it'll always be that way. And we're working on a universal flu vaccine, but I think the more important question today is, the coronavirus. That's the one people want to know about. And to me, the next question is, what's it going to look like next year, and how are we prepared for that?
And obviously right now, the American public is focused clearly on this edition of the coronavirus. And it's frustrating, I'm sure, for many to hear that it's going to take a year and a half to create that vaccine. Your process is with a so-called dead virus rather than live virus. I'm sorry.
No, it's actually it's an adenoviral virus that's been emptied, and then you put the sequence of a gene and that you synthesize inside. So there's no virus per se.
Do you notice how cleverly I let you explain?
I know, I appreciate that. Well done.
I'm sticking with dead virus.
Well played.
The fact of the matter is that I've talked to a number of people who think there's great potential for the methodology you're using and the train that you're on because of the vulnerable groups in this society to the coronavirus who could not withstand a live virus or certain other types of technology in the vaccine, your approach may offer the best hope for those who are pregnant women, who are aged, who are in firm pre-existing conditions, compromised immune systems, and so forth. The virus most deadly for those groups.
We believe that we have a safe vaccine. Incredibly safe, and we believe that the methodology allows us to be the old-fashioned business side, Lou, cheaper, faster, and better.
Yep.
So we think we're better, and we know we're better. We know that we're faster, and we've worked on cheaper. So I think it meets the needs of the community at large.
Well, it's exciting to hear this. It is also the reality that we know that the FDA, the trials that await you and any other genetic engineering, any life science company involved in this enterprise, and we want you all to speed up as fast as you can. What is necessary to move this product forward at the fastest possible rate? Because the president has made it clear he wants to see things move very quickly, period, in terms of drugs, in terms of pharmaceuticals, to a waiting and necessary to serve population.
Always money and always people. So what's necessary to move it forward, the $8.3 billion bill that was signed last week with the support of, people like Kevin Brady and
bipartisan.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
So what happens is then the money gets distributed, and that will be what's interesting next.
It's interesting, and I'm talking with Dr. Anthony Fauci of NIH, the head of infectious diseases, a man I respect tremendously. Sure. He has talked about a year to a year and a half. You have talked about accelerating that.
Sure.
What is the predicate for doing that?
The desire to have a vaccine with a stake in the ground that says we need to have it this is the day that we want it.
Well, I want to put something up here. And we've talked to the Department of Health and Human Services, and there was a declaration, if we could put this up, the declaration by Alex Azar, the Health and Human Services Secretary. This U.S. public health emergency, he declared it on January 31st, follows a declaration by the World Health Organization, WHO, that the spread of the virus constituted a public health emergency of international concern. WHO is the entity that would issue a pandemic declaration. A pandemic declaration is not necessarily the purview, though, of WHO. The U.S. government has the responsibility, indeed the President of the United States, if he wants to accelerate things, he could do so with such a declaration, could he not?
I believe so, and the other day on one of your news shows, an individual came out and said, we view this as a pandemic.
Right.
So
we've said it here.
That's correct. That's correct. So the issue is if the President says it's a pandemic, it's a pandemic.
And there is nothing that I could see that would disqualify it. We're in 111 countries as of the last reading.
Correct.
We have over 100,000 people infected with the disease. Many of them are recovering, just about 60%, thank God. That's necessary, you think, to move forward, to get special access to money, to special new deadlines for clinical trials?
I would say the latter, new deadlines. If you declare it a pandemic, if you say we're going to change how we introduce the clinical trials, if we change the subject count, if we change the length of time, A lot of these things can change the delivery date.
By how much do you think?
Be
conservative.
Be conservative. 6 months.
6 months could help a lot of folks.
Sure.
Well, John, we appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
We wish you a lot of luck on behalf of the American people.
Thank you very much.
Indeed, people around the world. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
And the company is Graphics and Genetic Engineering. John, the CEO thereof.
Thank
Great
you.
to have you here. Come back
Thank
soon.
you. I would like to. Thank you.
Dr. Mark Rupp, he's the Infectious Diseases Director at the University of Nebraska Medical Center, and we are appreciative of your time, Doctor, and thank you so much for being with us. I'd like to...
My pleasure.
If you would update us on how many patients you have there now. I know at one point you had 15, and I wanted to get a sense of how their recovery is going.
Yeah, so we're doing well. We've successfully discharged some of the patients from the quarantine unit. We're down to just 7 of those individuals. We have one of those patients also in the biocontainment unit that came from our community related to travel. So unfortunately, we're starting to see some cases here within the community related to travel and then close contact with that patient. But our experience now is mirroring what we're seeing throughout the country.
And I want to turn now to testing, because there has been some considerable, well, it's confusion, if you will, about how many tests have been put out. And it's sort of inexplicable to me that there has been, in some cases, apparently hundreds of thousands of test kits sent out, but without a way in which to report back whether those test kits have been used, whether the result of the test is positive or negative. Your thoughts about this?
Well, I think that, first of all, we welcome the increased amount of resources that are coming to bear on this. So
Right.
The announcement of billions of dollars coming out from the federal government, that should help with developing vaccine, as you just talked about with your last guest, developing medications, stockpiling appropriate personal protective equipment, but also getting the tests available more widely. And unfortunately, I think there is a little bit of a disconnect between the pronouncement saying that there are millions of tests that are out there, and then those of us who have our boots on the ground and are seeing these folks and having to try to order tests through the community. That continues to be somewhat difficult, somewhat ponderous. There's a fair amount of bureaucracy sometimes involved with that. Mm-hmm. It's not as streamlined as it should be. Now, obviously, once the CDC or FDA takes their hands off the control of those tests and disseminates them out to hospitals and private labs and other commercial labs, it becomes more difficult to maintain that reporting scheme. So that's where, your comment of, gee, how can we send these out there and we don't really know how many tests have been done and what the results of those are. So that takes a lot of effort to have those mechanisms in place to make sure that we get those reports back. But most importantly, we need to know those positive results. That needs to be a reportable disease, and public health needs to know those, which they do. So we will know the positive cases. We just may not know the total number of cases and tests that are being performed.
In this digital age, I think we've all come to expect perhaps too much, but certainly expecting a more expedient and efficient reporting mechanism than we've encountered so far in these tests. And obviously the President's Corona Task Force are working diligently to get that fixed and to get it underway. So we'll hope for the best. At this point, in terms of the, you talked about public perceptions and the reality on the ground. Is this, in your judgment, I was talking with the President the other day. He remains very positive and very pleased, as he should be, it seems to me, with his administration's response. At the same time, we're talking about now the death toll is up to 28, 19 of those at a nursing home in Kirkland, Washington, as you well know. And relatively few people having contracted the disease. Is it your sense that we're making too much of this, or are we just about right, or are we completely off the rails?
Well, nobody has a crystal ball to know exactly how this is going to unfold. Clearly, from what we've seen in other parts of the world with China, what we're seeing in Iran, Italy, this virus should not be trifled with, that it can spread very wide, very quick, very far, and we do need to take this quite seriously. Now, having said that, we don't want to panic. We don't want to do things that don't make any sense to us. And I would agree with some of the pronouncements that, relate that, we're going to be okay, that in 6 months or 12 months, the major wave of this will have passed. And the real question is, are we going to get to that okay place by being smart or being not so smart? And the smart things would be to prepare for this in any place where it hasn't already hit, to be broadly testing in the places where we can in order to find out where it is and how far it's penetrated. And then in those places where we are seeing community spread, we do need to wisely put in public health measures that will cause social distancing. So before this virus gets into a community, canceling schools and events makes very little sense. But once it's there, we do need to start taking those prudent measures to get what we call social distancing. So people need to stay home. They need to do the things that we've been preaching here for the last week or two. And public health needs to come in, and we need to listen to public health when they come in and say, okay, now is the time to start putting into some of those school cancellations and social distancing, perhaps canceling events. That's when it makes sense to me to listen to our experts and to put those things into place. Now, the one thing I would relate also to the public is there's going to be a shift in our recommendation sometime in the weeks to come. And that is, right now, we need to be testing as widely as we possibly can to figure out where this disease is. But once it's in a community, then the message is going to change a little bit to say, look, if you have an upper respiratory infection and a fever and you're otherwise doing okay, probably the best thing for you is to stay home, to self-quarantine, to not spread this. The last thing you want to do at that point is to come screaming into the emergency department to plug up the hospital or the clinics unnecessarily. So when that shift occurs will happen a few weeks down the road.
Dr. Rupp, as always, we thank you for lining up reality and perception. We appreciate it so much. Dr. Mark Rupp.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Up next, Congressman Andy Biggs joins us to take up Pfizer reform. Are we going to have reform, or are we going to reauthorize another Spygate? Stay with us. With reforms, we're told this week, those reforms include enhanced congressional oversight, penalties for those who politically abuse the FISA process, Spygate, and require transcripts of FISA court proceedings. Fox News is reporting the House will vote tomorrow, the Senate planning to vote on it Thursday, the last congressional day before three key parts of FISA are scheduled to expire. Joining us tonight, Congressman Andy Biggs, chair of the House Freedom Caucus, a member of the House Judiciary Committee, co-chair of the Border Security Caucus. Congressman, good to have you with us. Are you kidding me? This is going to be voted on tomorrow? Did I miss the hearings and the amendments? What happened here?
There were no hearings other than the Rules Committee, but every bill gets to the Rules Committee, and they decided they would not have...
Congressman, excuse me.
Yeah.
We've watched a president go through pure hell because of the abuse of power of a politically corrupt FBI and Department of Justice using this same FISA court system and defrauding it, and we're not going to have hearings on it?
That's right. I mean, it wasn't just the president, the whole country. Think if you were Carter Page. I mean, Lou, we didn't have, Judiciary should have had a hearing on this. Intel Committee should have had a hearing. They should have let us offer amendments. We should be voting on amendments tomorrow. We're not doing any of that. And the reality is, in my opinion, these proposed reforms will do nothing to protect the president. But oddly enough, there is a provision in there to protect elected federal officials or candidates for federal office, if you can believe that. A special provision for who knows, maybe congressmen and senators. That's what's in there, and we're treating that...
Unbelievable.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Another factor, you've got things like the so-called amici, which was never used in the Carter Page case.
Are the Republicans intent on destroying the party? I mean, this is madness. Yeah. Is Kevin McCarthy in favor of this idiocy?
I'm led to believe that he supports the reform bill, if I can put it that, the kind of bipartisan reform bill. Yeah.
And it goes to the Senate. Mitch McConnell, surely, stalwart of the great constitutional republic, surely he will stand against this, that it will simply enable more abuse and more political corruption on the part of the Justice Department, the FBI.
I don't think I can agree with that statement, sir. I believe that this is going to get through the Senate. The only threat is, don't forget this, the Senate, many in the Senate want a clean reauthorization with no reforms at all. And the bottom line is, I would rather just see this thing completely expire at midnight on Sunday. And if that happens, guess what? They'll keep spying on foreign agents and probably keep spying on Americans as well.
So you're not one of those who is moved by the scare tactics that there would be a terrorist attack because we didn't authorize 3 provisions of the FISA court legislation?
Not at all. Look, that's what our intelligence agencies do. They spy on foreign folks, and then we found out that some of them spy on Americans.
Yeah, well, it turns out they spent more time spying on a president than they did known terrorists in half a dozen cases.
Yeah, that's right. And
so what happens? The president has said he opposes reauthorization without reform. What does he do here? Will he veto it if necessary?
I would hope so, but I'm afraid that he's going to be persuaded. I think people are going to try to hang a potential terrorist threat on his neck. They're going to say, oh, we've got these internal mechanisms now in place. We've strengthened, we've enhanced criminal penalties. But Lou, you and I both know this. It's not criminal if you don't charge somebody and convict them. And they didn't charge anybody.
Penalties.
Yeah, you could say we're going to be 100 years, but you don't deter any of this activity unless you actually charge somebody and actually try them or persuade them to plead to a conviction. If you don't have that, yeah, it's just not.
So we're at the point that we don't have to worry about they're not reauthorizing it because we know full well the corrupt FBI and Justice Department will spy anyway. And secondarily, we know that no one will be held accountable for the crimes they've already committed under FISA. Congressman Andy Biggs, always great to have you with us. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Lou.
Thank you for watching the video. Please subscribe, click the like button, leave a comment. Have a great day.